Okay, so welcome to this talk, which is on awareness of selves. And you probably know we're in a series of talks which are awareness, the path to the deathless. And the talks are structured around 4 dimensions of awareness. We can be aware of ourselves, aware of other people, aware of nature, the environment, and aware of reality. So we've been talking about being aware of self. And today we're exploring that some more, because with just a little bit of self-examination, I think for most of us, it becomes clear that we are actually many selves.
Could you move the mic down a bit? It's just rubbing on your neck.
Okay.
Thank you. It's creating crackles. Okay.
Oh, it's got caught in the jumper.
Need your hand.
I think I do.
There you go.
Great, thank you. So is that okay now? Oh, do I try it again? Do a little sound test? Yeah, that's okay now. It's not making the crackles. Great. Okay, so I was saying yes, with a bit of examination, we probably all have that experience. Actually, for most of us, we are many selves. Or as Sangha, the founder of True Atma, says, we're usually just a bundle of conflicting desires and selves, both conscious and unconscious, loosely tied together with a thread of a name and address. So just a bundle of conflicting desires and selves, conscious and unconscious, loosely tied together with a thread of a name and address. So in ourselves, it's like our conscious selves, we've been ourselves, conscious and unconscious, we've been divided into a number of cells and parts, each with their own interests, desires, etc. And they all go their own way at different times. One's got the upper hand. One day we're, say, the dutiful self. Maybe later in the day we're the disobedient self. Maybe we're the self that wants to run away from everything and go and live in a cave. Another day we're the self that just wants to stay at home. One day we're a really good girl or a bad girl, good boy, bad boy. It's just like all these different selves that we have. And we hardly know very often which of these selves we really truly are. Each of them is our self, and yet none of them is our self. So Sangha actually uses this great word. Now, this isn't a Buddhist word, it's an English word, but just because it's great to learn more words. But the word is, I don't even know how to pronounce it actually, but I think it's congeries, maybe, which is, congeries is a disorderly collection, a jumble of selves. So we're just a disorderly collection of selves. And out of this association of selves, one self will emerge to commit the whole person to a decision. So we might, one part of us gets really enthusiastic about something. I'm going to do the Metta Bhavana for 3 hours every day and get really enthusiastic about that. Or I'm going to write a novel. I'm going to spend 2 hours a day writing, or whatever it is. But then it gets replaced by another self who kind of wonders what all that fuss was about, not at all keen on doing the Metta Bhavana every day or writing the novel. And it's like one self follows another, like waves breaking on the shores of one present state of mind. And I think we're all familiar with this. Well, maybe not everybody. I'm not going to presume that you all are, but for many of us we are. And I think it can become quite obvious for some of us when we want to meditate. I know some people find it easy just to get a practice going, which is fantastic. But for those who don't, well, first of all, there's that self who perhaps at the Buddhist Centre goes, tomorrow I'm going to get up really early and meditate before I go to work. Yeah, that would be great. But somehow overnight, that self seems to be replaced by another self who kind of lies in bed going, I think I vaguely remember that I thought I was going to meditate this morning, but this bed's so warm and lovely, I don't want to get out of that. Or if we do manage to get ourselves onto the cushion, it might be that we find ourselves, it's like one part of ourselves gets going with its meditation. It's like dragging all the other selves along. They're protesting. But gradually that bit that wants to meditate just weakens, gets submerged under this whole welter of other selves. We technically call them distractions, but you could see them as lots of different selves. And which will, if they can, they'll just stop you from meditation. They'll go, no, you've got to get up. You've got to go and get ready for work or whatever it is. So it's a bit like, you can see how all these different selves. And more than that, in a way, sometimes it can feel like we've got these traitors within ourselves, actually, that some of ourselves are pretty grim, and they subvert, they sabotage our plans, our best plans. So the wish to grow, to develop, it's instinctive, but it's not an automatic process because we get inspired, but we can't sustain it because we are many selves. And I remember ages ago going on one of my first retreats, and at the beginning of the retreat, because I didn't know anybody there, I was feeling quite defensive and like kind of had this sense that everybody else was like a shark, like really single-minded, and I had to watch out for them, that they were kind of like, yeah, like sharks. And then by the end of the retreat, I thought, oh no, we are all like shoals of different fish, not even the same fish. We're just made up of all these different fishes swimming in lots of different directions. So you can imagine like a shark is one-minded and can attack. These shoals of fish, they just don't know what they're doing almost. It's just like swimming about. Or the Santra uses the image of us as being made up of a whole number of people running a marathon. So some of us are really up front, we're going for it, we've trained really well, we've eaten whatever it is, the pasta, we've done all that, we're really happy to put up with the discomfort, really going for it. But then there are parts of us, they don't want to be running the marathon, they want to be in a cafe, having a cup of tea or coffee, or there are parts of us who've got a broken leg and they can't even do the marathon. So unless we can bring all of ourselves into whatever we're doing, including those the trailing parts of ourselves, we're not going to complete, not all of us isn't going to complete the race. And this is true of our spiritual life. If we want to make progress, we might find that part of us wants to practice, and there are other parts, other selves that don't want to do that. So what I'm talking about here is actually talking about becoming more integrated. And integration is a really important part of our spiritual growth. So in one model that we use widely in Triratna, we talk about 5 aspects of the spiritual life, or 5 aspects of our practice. And in a way, don't worry about this too much. I just thought some people are quite like the context of what we do things in. So basically, one way, so I've got a few models that I'm referring to today. And the thing about models is they're just trying to describe quite a kind of complicated world, complex world that we live in. We have to be careful not to get too literal. So one way you can look at these aspects is you start off with some integration, positive emotion, and then spiritual death, spiritual rebirth, spontaneous compassion, which is the end of the path, enlightenment. So we start with integration. But another way you could look at this model is you see it as like in a mandala, a circle, and we've got receptivity instead of spiritual compassion in the middle, and integration, positive emotion, spiritual rebirth, and spiritual death. Well, actually, they all come out of receptivity as well. So do you see what I mean? I've just had these 2 versions of this particular model, just so you get a sense they're just models. They're not like, it's not like you spend 3 years getting integrated, then 3 years doing spiritual. What does receptivity mean? So receptivity is just being open to whatever's going on, to what our actual experience is. Okay. Yes, so basically I just wanted to show you where integration fits into this kind of a map of the practices that we do in Triratna. So unintegration, being disintegrated, is painful. There's often a lot of pain, internal conflict. In a way, we can't trust ourselves because we don't know what's going to come up next. We don't know what we're going to do next. And we're not trustworthy to other people either. It's very difficult for us to make promises because we might not be able to keep them. So we might go one day full of kind of, whatever. Yeah, I will help you move house on Saturday. When it comes to Saturday, another self comes, no, I can't do that on a Saturday. It's my day off. It's just like we don't have that integration. I suppose an integrated person might go, actually, I'm not going to be able to help that person move on a Saturday because I need to have a day off, for instance, or something like that. Fadani has got this lovely image of, not lovely, it's actually not a very nice image, but anyway, an image of like the discomfort of when we have 1 foot on the shore and 1 foot in a boat. Okay, that's not a nice place to be. And that is the place when we're unintegrated. In fact, we've probably got our hands and everything in lots of different boats. It's like we're going in lots of different directions. It's really uncomfortable. And without integration, we'll be driven by instinct and a vague kind of urges, impulses, inclinations that we have. So the more that we're integrated, the more we might have a sense of a stronger sense of agency in the world, that we can actually make things happen. We can do what we'll say we'll do. Because integration is also linked to our moral sense. It means fully grasping that what we do has an effect. It has an effect on ourselves, on our own unfolding consciousness, but it has an effect on other people's as well. So whatever we do has an effect. And when we are integrated, it can be very joyful. Because integration isn't just a thought, an idea, a theory, it's a sense. And the first characteristics of this sense of integration is an increasing experience of wholeness, of unification and harmony. So it's a bit like we will feel more like we're in the flow. We will feel a sense of flow. Things will seem easy to us when we're feeling integrated, that we're in charge of our own energy, we've got agency, we can channel our energy. Things come together, we have a sense of well-being. It's a very human state, this state of integration. Hopefully one that everybody's experienced. It's a very embodied state. People often experience it when they're playing sport, maybe when you're reading a novel, maybe when you're listening to music. You haven't got any inattention about what you should be doing. In meditation, you experience it as well. And in talking about integration, this kind of coming together of these different selves, there are two helpful models we can use. Again, just models. Oh dear. This one I'm going to have to really explain. Okay, so I don't know if everyone can see it either. What we've got going on is we've got a group of people here, and they're all different parts of ourselves, okay? Some of them are quite grown up, but some of them are very little. That one's a baby, because quite often parts of ourselves include very young parts of ourselves as well. Some parts of our, and that's a horizontal line. So there's a sense in which we can be horizontally integrated, which means we bring together all these different parts, all these different selves together. The other way that we can be integrated is vertically. So my drawing skills really let me down here, but basically down here, so this is a line that goes up and down, the vertical line, and I've got a kind of monster, a blob, and a kind of magical, magician-ish kind of person. You might fill in your depth. And up here I've got the sunshine and also sort of angel, but obviously not an angel really, don't worry, it's not an angel really, it's just that kind of a symbol. And you might... So horizontal is where we, it corresponds to what we've been talking about in some of the previous talks. It's about when we mindfulness, recollection. Recollection is a great word because it means recollecting. It's a gathering together of what's been scattered. Vertical is about more the integration of the conscious mind with the subconscious mind. So you might have a sense of ourselves as being like an iceberg or a mountain, and just a little bit of the iceberg is above the sea. That's our conscious mind. The rest of the stuff that's going on in us is unconscious. And when things come, when we can get in touch with what's going on for us unconsciously, that might feel to us sometimes like it's coming from above, or it might feel like it's coming from the depths. It can feel both ways. And vertically, with this kind of integrating the subconscious part of ourselves, well, we probably repressed quite powerful, quite magical parts of ourselves live in our unconscious. But our unconscious also includes parts of ourselves that we've suppressed from our consciousness because we don't like them. We don't want to be like that. We don't want to be dangerous. We don't want to be antisocial. All sorts of things that, in a way, are quite good that you don't want to be going out and doing in society as a whole, but you've kind of repressed that down. But actually, in order to become integrated, to not have this sense of all these selves just not working together, we need to experience our negative selves, not cut off from them. What we need to do is create a big enough awareness that can hold all of us. Someone called Ratna Ghosh said, "Don't be good, be big." I thought that was quite nice, because if you're trying to be good all the time, you're going to repress those bad sides. I use that word. You're going to repress those bits of you don't like. But if you're big, you can hold them in a bigger way. I think somebody in a talk a few weeks ago used that same image, which is like, you might, if you've put like a horse in a little kind of shed, it might kick around and make a lot of a mess. If you give the horse a really big field, it can run around as much as you like and it doesn't do any harm. So it's a sense that our awareness is this big field, watching with kindness and curiosity what's going on in our minds. Because refusing to experience a part of ourselves, a self, doesn't mean that part itself has ceased to exist, sadly. So it might be unacknowledged by us, but it's still very much alive, and probably, alive and kicking, actually, because quite often those selves, they just want to be seen. They just want to be listened to, particularly the very young ones. They just want to be listened to. And if we don't listen to them, if we repress them, they're going to keep trying to talk to us. And we might feel this in lots of different ways. I mean, for instance, one might just be in the guise of those moods that come upon us. Suddenly we feel depressed or anxious or angry. We don't really know why. And it can actually feel kind of like a mood takes possession of us. And we say, oh, I don't really feel myself today. I don't know what came over me. So it's a bit like we feel as if we're somebody else while we're in that mood. So I think that can be a sign that something's going on. So how do we become more integrated? How do we unify all these different selves? How do we integrate our whole being, our conscious, our unconscious, our intellectual and our emotional parts and all the others? So first of all, we need to acknowledge that we are unintegrated, because we're often a mystery to ourselves. We have no idea sometimes why we've done certain things. And the idea, I suppose, is we're aiming to have no secrets from ourselves, that we really understand ourselves, that we know our conditioning from our family, the society we live in, what views we have about life. Because if we know what views we have, if we know our different selves, well, we can decide whether they're great and we just want to keep them, or we can decide that perhaps we'll be happier if we change them. So interestingly, when in my early 20s, I remember saying to a friend, oh God, I'm so lucky, because I don't get angry. So I just saw, someone had a bit of a thing, and I said to her, my friend, oh, it's great. I just don't feel anger like that, Oh my God. How could I be so deluded? I mean, I presume that other people knew I was angry. I presume that I was kind of giving off like sideways anger or whatever, but I honestly thought that I didn't feel anger. It's because I am so uncomfortable with anger and conflict that I just went and didn't feel it. Then, a few years after that, I started going along to a Buddhist group. And my lodger said to me, my lodger at the time, he said, God, every time you come back from Buddhist night, you're really angry, you're really grumpy. So it was really funny, like doing awareness and metta, actually, I saw, it became more apparent what a lot of anger I had going on in me. And I think continually working with my anger, my irritability, is one of the main things that I work with. So it's really weird to think that when I was in my early 20s, I really thought I didn't do it. So we need to know ourselves. We need to know the anger that we've got, or the craving that we've got, or the fear that we've got, because it will be driving us if we're not aware of it. And we need to work out just what kind of a creature we are. So we have like a psychic shape as well as a physical shape. And we just need to understand that. And of course, many of these selves are hidden from us, but we can talk to other people, we can practice meditation, and hopefully it will slowly start to become apparent. Sometimes therapy is really helpful if we just feel really blocked and we just really can't work out what's going on for us, because a therapist can really help us work through and find out what's going on for us. Okay, so first of all, we need to acknowledge that we're integrated. And then secondly, in order to integrate, well, we need something to integrate round. So we need a central focus. Because without a central focus to integrate round, there's just going to be a feeling of discontinuity. So it's a bit like we need a single, very simple, organizing principle. And it doesn't mean single in the sense that it's just like narrow, but more that like it's a unifying current. So we have a sense of what it is that's important to us and where we're going. And to become fully integrated, we need some kind of a self-transcending meaning at the center of our lives, so that it's something that's more than just about me at the center of our lives. And one way to explore this is through what's called a personal mandala. And I thought maybe we could do it here, but I don't think we've got enough time. So I'm going to show it to you, give you a sense of them, and then you can talk about them in the group. So maybe it might be something you want to do at home in the week, or it's very good to do it with a friend or a group of people, actually. So a personal mandala. So mandalas are simply circular geometric designs, and they contain symbols of personal importance. What's important to you? So here's a personal mandala. So it's just a big circle, and I'll just talk through what's in the middle. I don't think you'll be able to see it. So I've put like a Buddha in the middle of mine to represent kindness, awareness, energy. But that might not be what you want to have in the middle. Just because you kind of come to the Buddhist Centre, you don't have to have anything Buddhist in the middle at all. It's really important that we know where we are and what is actually most important to us. So those of people who were here last week and did that really lovely exercise that Pranya Hridaya led, which was about, we asked ourselves, what do I most long for in this life? What is my heart wish? Whatever that was, that might be the center of your mandala for now. And I know it changes what's at the center of your mandala. Other things that could be at the center of your mandala. So I asked the people in the team what they might have. So some things that I thought of were things like ease, being at ease, kindness, freedom. Freedom, that's really strong for me. Freedom not to be kind of ruled by my conditioning and my kind of likes and dislikes and all that kind of stuff. Happiness, simple happiness for yourself and others might be in the middle. Love, beauty, alleviating suffering, safety. You might want to have safety in there. Connection. So lots of different things. You might realize that actually your children or your child is right at the center of your mandala. And that is what your life works about. So you put whatever is important to you in the middle. And it does change. It's not like you keep it forever. For some people, we talked about their Buddhist practice. And I think in a way that's what the Buddha represents for me in the middle there. He's representing my Buddhist practice. So that's what that's what you most long for. That's your highest wish in the middle. And then you write into the circle or draw into the circle how you actually spend your time and your money, what you actually do. So you might put in your family, your work, what you do with your time. So for instance, I put in my work, and that's actually right near the center because I'm lucky to work here. So my work is really close to the Buddha in the middle. I put in where I live, which is in the women's community. So that's probably a little bit further away, but it's still very close to that. Okay, but then I thought about, what am I spending my time doing? And I do seem to spend a ridiculous amount of time, to be honest, scrolling on my phone. So I thought that's what I'm spending quite a lot of time doing. That's not going to lead me to freedom. That's not going to lead me to ease. So I'd like to move that out to the side of my mandala. I mean, I'm still going to look at my phone, aren't I? But I could just like doing it in a different way. And then I realized recently that something that's really important to me in so many different ways, psychological, physical, spiritual, it's just going for a walk in the Peak District. Like for many of us, isn't it? It's just like a bit of a lifesaver. And I'm not doing it at the moment. And I just thought, bring it into your mandala. Do you know what I mean? That is something. So do you see what I mean? It's like you look at what you actually do with your time. And then you look at what you could do with your time, your money, your resources that fits in with your highest aspirations. And sometimes we can't change it. Do you know what I mean? Lots of people can't come and work at the centre. They can't live in a community. But there will be ways that you can approach the life you are living, which is bringing you closer to whatever your highest values are. So what we can do is consciously create our mandala around what's most important to us. So that might be something you do, because that will allow us to integrate. I mean, a lot of the sense of unintegration comes from we've got one higher self, as it were, going, I'd really love to have a sense of ease and freedom. And then you've got other selves who are going, no, you need to be busy every minute of the day. Do you see what I mean? And the two just, don't work together. Okay, so you might have a sense of where you are and the differences, the discrepancies. So what are some of the things you might do to actually become more integrated? Well, there's loads, probably everything, all Buddhist practice is about that. But I've got them under 3 headings of conditions, commitment, and courage. Conditions, commitment, and courage. So conditions is about we take the initiative to create the conditions which will be conducive to creating our spiritual life, because we're really influenced by our conditions. And I think the people that we spend time with, the resources, the food we put in our mind and our hearts, what we watch, what we read, what we look at, all of that will be really affecting us, probably a lot more than we think. Because we tend to think, oh no, I'm not affected by those kind of things. But people wouldn't spend millions and millions and millions of pounds on advertising if it didn't actually have an effect. It's like we are affected by things around us. And I've got a couple of just personal examples, not major ones, where I really noticed it. So I'd say it was like I'd already been practicing quite a while, really clear what was at the centre of my mandala, which at that point was training for ordination. And I went on a course. And it was a course in first aid for it being outside, like first aid for on the mountains kind of course. And on the course, there were loads of people doing this thing called the mountain leadership. And if you do your mountain leadership, you do loads of walks. It takes months. It's a really big thing. And because they were all doing it, I went away going, oh God, I've got to do my mountain leadership. And I was like, well, if I did that, I could take people from the Sangha out for walks. It would be great. I was really justifying it. When I thought about it, it was like the expense, the money, the time. It would have been crazy. It did not fit with my mandala. Do you know what I mean? But because I'd been with people who were so keen on it, it really affected me. Yeah, and another example was I went a little bit of traveling and I stayed in loads of people's houses. Some of those people had made the houses really, really nice. And having a really nice house is great. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's just not been part of my kind of thing that I do. And I found myself going, oh yeah, when I get back, I'm going to paint that wall. I'm going to move that thing. I'm going to buy a sofa. I'm going to do this, And I got back and I thought, no, I'm not. I don't want to do that with my time and money. This house is fine. Do you know what I mean? It's fine. And I just being with people who are lovely people, absolutely ethical and everything, but who had those different things that were important to them had an effect on me. So do you see what I mean? If something so kind of, a bit kind of whatever, superficial as those, just think what being with your colleagues who are very negative or your whoever is going to be doing to you. And of course, we can't avoid that, but I think the more we can be aware of it, and when we do have control over who we spend time with, we make wise decisions. So we maybe try to spend time with friends who are kind people, who support us. We maybe try to come to the centre. If what you want to do is practice the Dharma, being with other people who practice the Dharma is really important, because basically everything else in the outside world is not telling you to practice the Dharma. So the more you can be with other people who are, the easier and simpler your life will be, more integrated your life will be. Okay, so another thing we really need, conditions, I'm talking about conditions, is we really need friends, as I was saying, with the same values as ourselves. Partly because we need support, but actually often we learn about our different selves in the communication of ourselves. So we realise, we kind of say to somebody, I don't know, I can't think of an example, but we might kind of go to somebody, I really want to go horse riding. And they'll go, last week, you really wanted to do trapeze, and it's like you kind of go, I wonder what's going on there. It's just like, we get a sense. And more than that, it'd be kind of like someone will go, you told me that you were going to come and help set up the hall, but you didn't turn up. What's going on there? And you get a sense of what's happening. And we need people who we feel understood by and who are warm and not too judgmental. Because if we want to become integrated, we just really need to deepen our communication. In a way, to know ourselves, we need to be known by other people. Because we're disintegrated, we're bound to have blind spots. And we need trusted friends who can help us see ourselves. And it's often in our relationships with others, particularly our clashes actually with other people, that we learn most about ourselves. I mean, we kind of hope that people will tell us things about ourselves. They often don't. I mean, that's my experience. Why would they? It's really hard, isn't it, to tell somebody something difficult about themselves? But I think we can often feel it in our clashes with people. We can feel that something's going on that's not right. And also, open to how other people see us, because sometimes many of us don't feel very good about ourselves. And our friends will say, but you're great. You were really generous last week. You're really kind. You know, all that kind of stuff. And we're going, oh, no, I'm a really bad person, blah, 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 blah. Because it's just a habit we've got in, or a self that thinks we're really bad. But you can hear from other people that actually they perceive you in a different way. And that's really important. And another condition that's really helpful, of course, is going on retreat. Having a few days away, a few weeks away, a few months away, whatever you can do, that's a chance to really go deeper in our experience, to become more aware of ourselves at deeper levels. And different selves will definitely appear on retreat. And I think meditating a lot really allows integration to happen just kind of automatically without you having to do a huge amount of work. So lots of conditions are really important. So the second thing that helps us integrate is we commit. We make commitments. Because when we commit to something, it will really bring other hidden selves into the light. For instance, I asked for ordination a long time ago in a real burst of enthusiasm. And then for about 6 months, I didn't do anything about it. I didn't go on retreat. You know what I mean? I'd done it. So a part of me had gone, yeah, I really want to get ordained. And about 87 other parts had gone, uh-uh. You don't. So I had to do there's quite a lot of listening to those parts to be done in a way to kind of get to a stage where they actually wanted to book on a training retreat, an ordination training retreat. Whatever we commit, whatever it's to. So for us, we might commit to practice the precepts. The ethical precepts are a really good way to integrate, because that helps us to live in a way where we mean what we say, we mean what we do. If we say we're going to do something, we do it. So taking on any ethical precept, like we did on the newcomers course, is just really helpful. So you might decide, I'm not going to use my phone before 11 o'clock in the morning or something like that. So I'm going to become more aware. I might speak kindly to my children. And then all those times when you don't want to do that, or another self comes in who snaps at your children or is going, oh, I really want to look at my phone, you know that another self has come in, you know what's going on. So commitment can really, help us integrate. Just the commitment of sitting down to meditate every day, for instance. And maybe there comes a time when it's good, if you want to practice the Dharma, to maybe challenge yourself by committing, by becoming a mitra, asking for ordination, working at a centre, whatever it is that might be your next level of commitment. There might come a time where you go, oh yes, that would be a challenge, but it will help me to integrate. And then the third area is courage. So courage to turn towards those selves we don't like with kindness and with persistence. I think this is one of the hardest parts of my practice, my personal practice, because it's much easier to be horrible to myself and tell myself off when I do something that I'm not happy with. But it just doesn't seem to help. Those selves seem to stay as strong as ever if I tell them off. It just seems that I suppress it and then they come back in another way. So as I said, my anger and irritation has been an ongoing area of work. And what I'll find is, like, if I do get irritable, if I do snap at somebody, I feel loads of shame, actually. And then I kind of want to go, no, I don't want to know about it. And the only way it seems to change for me is I bring a sense of kindness and curiosity to what happened, just to really get in touch with that part. Why is it angry? What conditions contributed? Why am I tired? Which self or part of me felt threatened, that I felt that I needed to do that? What was going on for me? So this courage to turn with kindness towards those parts of ourselves we don't like. And the courage to be persistent, because some of ourselves just not are, they come back. You think, oh, great, really sorted that one out, whatever it is. And then they come back when the conditions change or at a deeper level. And there can just be, I think, with our underlying ways of being in the world, that maybe our views, ourselves that we developed when we were very young, they are quite persistent and they just need patience. Okay, so I've been broadly talking about working on the horizontal selves, but how do we work with the vertical bits? I'll go back to that picture. So I've been kind of talking about how we bring all ourselves together. How do we get in touch with all this stuff in our unconscious, which we're unconscious of? So how can we know what's going on there? I guess one is just we start behaving in ways that we don't understand, they don't align with our values. So we might feel a lot of envy or craving, fear, irritated by somebody particularly. Those kind of things might be a hint that something's going on. And this is where the mythic approach can really help. So you remember from the second part of the introductory course that we talk about how myths, stories, music, art, archetypal figures can really help contact and wake up the unconscious. So ritual, mantra, puja, devotional practice all communicate with our depths. And the archetypal figure of Padmasambhava can be really helpful in how we might work with some parts of us, some selves. So there's a painting here of Padmasambhava. I'm not going to spend much time talking about him, actually. It's really worth looking up if you haven't come across him before. But he's the archetype of the magician. He did exist historically. He's also a very mythic archetypal figure. And he was renowned for spending time with the demons and darkinies of the most terrifying sort and converting them to be on his side. And we might experience our own jealousy and anger, our own cravings and lusts, our addictions, our own delusions and fears as demons that terrify us and need to be repressed. Often we particularly repress our fears, actually. So Padmasambhava spent many years sitting in the cremation grounds, which is where bodies were burnt. And bits of bodies were left around, really the most scary place he could go. And with the Dharma as his support, he didn't do it on his own, he had the support of the Dharma. He was his refuge, and he turned towards those terrifying demons and talked with them and communicated in many different ways. Some he subdued by showing his strength, some he seduced, some he had talked with, and so that they came onto his side. Later in his life, he was invited by the king of Tibet to help with the reintroduction of Buddhism into Tibet. And he eventually agreed to come, but he didn't go straight to meet the king. What he did is he went on a big tour of the whole country of Tibet. He went to really distant, inaccessible mountains, waterfalls, lakes, etc. And in each of those places, he sought out the demons and the gods of each. And the story goes, he bound under oath the upper classes of gods and demons, posting them henceforth as treasure guardians. It's kind of archaic language, isn't it? But he bound under oath the upper classes of gods and demons, posting them henceforth as treasure guardians. So he met each one, and usually they were really antagonistic. They did not want him in Tibet messing about. And he had to prove his strength to them in some way to bring them on his side. But once he'd done that, he didn't just vanquish them and leave them. He bound them an oath, so they served the purpose of making Tibet a Buddhist country. And what that means is a Buddhist country is a country where people practice ethics, they aim to develop kindness and generosity to become wiser. That's what he was doing. And the bit that I really like, he posted them henceforth as treasure guardians. Because each of these selves, these demons, the parts of us that we find disturbing and we suppress, each has a role in our lives, and each is trying to do something for us. They hold a treasure for us. So there's a type of therapy called internal family systems that speaks a bit less poetically about this. They say there are no bad parts. By parts, they mean what we've been calling selves in this talk. Each self, each part, however misguidedly, is trying to do what it can to protect us, to look after us. Often, parts of ourselves get stuck another time in our life, perhaps trauma in childhood. And the way that the part or the self will manifest its help is really counterproductive to us now as adults, because it might be things like, addictions like drinking, it might be all sorts of things, all the unhelpful things we do. But if we can get to know this self, this part, we can release the burden that it carries and allow it to reveal its treasure. And that can be a really kind of profound thing. I'm going to just give a small example, but years ago, I was on retreat at Taraloka, and there was a few days of silence. I had loads of space. It was really nice. And I became really aware of my anxiety. And when I turned towards my experience of it, it seemed to me to be like this, like electric blue, little fizzing ball with all these kind of fireworks coming out of it, spikes. And The anxiety that I was feeling was a certain kind of anxiety about being tight with following the rules of the retreat, being a good girl. And I just didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to have this internal thing. So I turned towards this anxiety, this blue fizzing being. And I said to the anxiety, could you just leave me alone? Just go away. Just go away. I don't want you anymore. And I went off on a walk. And actually, it was lovely. It was really rainy, but it was lovely. No anxiety. Great. But I really wanted to go to the afternoon session, which started at 4, and I found myself really late. And I had to rush, and I don't like rushing in that kind of situation. I had to really rush. I was late. It was really horrible. And my anxiety, when I sat down to meditate, it said to me, look, you do need me. So this so-called demon, this so kind of actually had a treasure, which was getting me to places on time. And so you can see how, of course, I don't want that anxiety all caught up in being a good girl and all that kind of stuff. There's a whole load of stuff there that wasn't helpful. But there was a treasure that particular kind of anxiety did hold for me. And when I just want to say a thing, which is when we get to know these parts of ourselves, these difficult parts, I'm not in any way saying that we act them out. Do you know what I mean? It's like we get to know them, but we always act within the ethical precepts. We don't act harmfully to ourselves or others. I'm not at all saying anything like it's good to lose your temper or anything like that. I'm just saying what's good to know is to turn towards that part of you when you do lose your temper, if you see what I mean, and make sure, do what you can so that you're setting up the conditions so you don't do it again. I'm absolutely not saying that we just let the demons kind of out to run around. But what we're trying to do is get that energy on our side, working for us, not undermining us. As well as demons and monsters in our unconscious, we've got many magical beings and figures. And they can be any kind of magicians, witches, good witches, powerful creatures, queens and kings. They can come into our conscious mind and they can bring richness and joy to our lives. This can be a positive integration from our unconscious. And Maitreya Bandhu's got this lovely image of how usually our sense of self is like being a little raft floating on the sea. We're really caught up in this raft. We're really caught up in this self. I want this. I want to protect my raft. I want to have the best possible sail on my raft. I want to be going where I want to go. All this kind of really caught up in the raft. I want really good logs, all that kind of stuff. So we're all caught up in that. But sometimes when we quieten our minds down and we give ourselves space to, we might get a sense of the deep ocean below us, all the amazing creatures who live in the depths in that ocean and what magic they can bring to us. And we also might get a sense of the stars above us, the beauty of the night sky above us, and what we can kind of like that feeling of something so much greater, so much bigger than us. And when we feel like that, it can be a magical sense. Life feels meaningful, open. It might feel like it's in our depths, these creatures in the ocean. It might feel like it's in the heights, the stars in the sky. But whatever it is, we're opening out to something bigger than us, which we want to be like. So all of us want those experiences. But Maitreya Bandhu says we don't get them because we're trying to finish our emails. So just don't do your emails. So what we need to do is give ourselves quiet and space so that those parts of ourselves, those selves that are so beautiful can actually come into our experience. So to end, we have many selves. They contain treasures and jewels for us, but some of those selves might not be working together. So our task is to get to know all the different selves, to bring them into our awareness, to integrate around something we find meaningful and beautiful, and then to live from that place of integration, of awareness. So then we can be straightforward, trustworthy human beings. We can trust ourselves, and we can live lives that are rich and beautiful.